Some children don't grow up slowly. They grow up suddenly. At some point in childhood, something changes. Maybe no one explains it. Maybe no one even notices. But that child understands something very early. They need to be strong. While other children are learning how to play, they are learning how to control themselves. While other children are learning how to ask for help, they are learning not to bother anyone. Be responsible. Be mature. Be the one who solves things. And from the outside, everything looks impressive. What a mature child. So smart for their age. They understand everything. But inside, something silent has already happened. Because when a child grows up too fast, they don't just learn how to be strong. They learn how to hide their exhaustion, to swallow their feelings. To handle everything alone. And years later, no one understands why that adult always seems tired. In this video, we're going to talk about the psychology of people who had to grow up too early. And maybe, for the first time, you will understand something about yourself that you've never been able to put into words. There is a very quiet moment in the life of some children. It is not a big event. It is not something that anyone announces. But it happens. At some point during childhood, the child realizes that they cannot simply be a child. Maybe it happened when they saw their parents arguing and decided not to cry so things would not get worse. Maybe when they realized that no one was really paying attention to how they felt. Or maybe when they understood that they needed to behave, be mature, and not cause trouble. And then something changes. Without realizing it, the child begins to take on a role that was never supposed to be theirs. They start observing everything. The moods of the people in the house. The tension in the air. The problems that nobody explains. And little by little, they begin to do something that many children do not need to do so early in life. They begin to regulate themselves. They learn to hold their feelings inside. They learn to solve things on their own. They learn not to depend on anyone. While other children learn that the world is a place where they can ask for help, this child learns that it is better not to need anyone. This does not happen because they are special. It happens because, on some level, they understood that there was not much space for them to be taken care of. So they do what emotionally intelligent children often do in order to survive. They adapt. They become the child who understands everything. The one who does not cause trouble. The one who helps. The one who solves things. The adults around them often see this as something positive. She's so responsible. He's so mature for his age. He doesn't even seem like a child. But behind that maturity, there is something that almost no one notices. Because when responsibility arrives too early, it does not just replace the natural immaturity of childhood. It replaces childhood itself. The child begins to live in a constant state of awareness, always trying to keep things in order, always trying not to create more problems. And with time, this stops being just a behavior. It becomes identity. They are not just someone responsible. They become the person who takes care of everything. And this is exactly where something begins that will follow this person for many years. Because growing up too fast does not only mean learning things early, it also means carrying weights that were never supposed to be yours. There is something else that happens when a child grows up too fast. It isn't something anyone says out loud. There is no moment where a rule is explained. But somewhere along the way, the child makes a quiet decision. A kind of invisible contract with the world. The contract sounds something like this. Don't cause problems. Don't need too much. Handle things yourself. And once that contract is made, the child begins to live by it. They stop asking for help even when they need it. They stop showing how overwhelmed they feel. They learn to keep things inside, not because they are naturally distant, but because, at some point, it felt safer to be the strong one. So they become the reliable one, the one who understands, the one who adapts, the one who figures things out. And the strange part is that people around them often start to depend on that. Adults trust them with more responsibility. Friends come to them with problems. Teachers describe them as mature. From the outside, it looks like strength. But inside, something else is happening. Because when a child learns that love and safety are connected to being easy to deal with, they begin to hide parts of themselves. They hide their confusion. They hide their anger. They hide the moments when they feel small or scared. Over time, this becomes automatic. They become very good at managing themselves, yet very good at reading a room, very good at staying composed. But there is a quiet cost. Because the invisible contract they made as a child doesn't disappear when they grow up, it follows them into adulthood. They become the adult who struggles to ask for help, the one who feels uncomfortable depending on others, the one who handles everything alone, even when they are exhausted. And often, they don't even realize why. They just know that somewhere deep inside, there is a rule that has always been there. Take care of everything. Don't be a burden. Keep going. What once helped them survive childhood slowly becomes the thing that makes adulthood feel so heavy. When a child grows up too fast, something unusual happens later in life. From the outside, they often look like the kind of adult who has everything under control. They are responsible, reliable, independent, they handle problems. They show up when people need them, they rarely complain. In many ways, they become exactly the kind of person the world admires. But inside, there is often a quiet exhaustion that is difficult to explain. Not just physical tiredness, something deeper. Because when someone learns, very early in life, that they must handle everything alone, they develop a habit that follows them everywhere. They carry more than they should. They carry responsibilities that were never truly theirs. They carry the emotions of other people. They carry the pressure of always being the one who holds things together. And after many years of doing this, something starts to happen. The mind becomes tired. Not because the person is weak, but because they have been in a state of constant responsibility for far too long. People who grew up too fast often struggle with something they can't easily explain to others. They feel like they can never truly relax. Even when things are calm, part of their mind is still scanning the environment, still asking silent questions. Is everything okay? Is someone about to need me? Did I forget something? Their nervous system learned very early that staying alert was necessary. So even as adults, they often live with a quiet background tension. And there is another challenge that appears later. Because when someone has spent their entire life being the one who helps everyone else, they often don't know how to receive help themselves. Being supported can feel uncomfortable. Being vulnerable can feel unnatural, not because they don't want connection, but because they never truly learned that they were allowed to be taken care of too. So they keep going. They solve problems. They show strength. They take responsibility. And the world continues to see them as capable. But beneath that capability, many of them carry a quiet question they have never fully asked out loud. Why do I feel so tired all the time? The answer often goes back much further than they realize. Back to a time when they were still a child. A child who learned far too early that life would be easier if they simply became the strong one. For many people who had to grow up too fast, there comes a moment later in life that feels strange and uncomfortable. A moment of realization, not about what they did wrong, but about what was never supposed to be their responsibility in the first place. For years, they believed that the way they lived was simply normal. Being the strong one, being the responsible one, being the one who keeps everything together. It felt like personality, like identity. But at some point, usually much later in adulthood, something begins to shift. Maybe it happens in a quiet moment of exhaustion. Maybe it happens during a difficult conversation. Or maybe it happens when they see another child being protected, supported, and cared for in a way they never were. And suddenly, a new thought appears. A thought that can feel both relieving and painful at the same time. I was just a child. A child who is trying to understand the world. A child who is learning how relationships work. A child who should have been allowed to make mistakes, to feel overwhelmed, to need help. But instead, that child learned something very different. They learned that being useful made life easier. They learned that staying quiet avoided conflict. They learned that solving problems earned approval. And because of that, they stepped into a role that was never meant for them. Not because they chose it, but because children adapt to the environment they grow up in. They do what they need to do to survive emotionally. And when a child becomes the responsible one too early, they rarely question it. They simply grow into it. For years, sometimes decades, they carry this role without realizing how heavy it is. Until one day they begin to look back at their childhood from the perspective of an adult. And something finally becomes clear. That child who was trying so hard to hold everything together was never supposed to be doing that. They weren't supposed to understand everything. They weren't supposed to manage the emotions of others. They weren't supposed to carry responsibilities that belonged to the adults around them. They were supposed to be learning, exploring, playing, and slowly growing into the world. But life asked something different from them. And recognizing this truth can be emotional, because it means acknowledging something many people never allowed themselves to feel before God, not anger, not blame, just a quiet understanding that the strength they developed so early in life was never a sign that they needed less care. It was a sign that they needed more support than they received. At some point, after all the realization, another question slowly begins to appear. A quiet one. What happens now? Because once someone understands that they had to grow up too fast, they also begin to see how that experience shaped the way they move through the world. The constant responsibility, the difficulty asking for help, the habit of carrying everything alone. These patterns were never random. They were survival strategies. They were the ways a child learned to navigate a world that asked too much too early. And for a long time, those strategies worked. They helped that child stay safe, that they helped them adapt. They helped them become capable adults. But survival strategies are not always meant to last forever. At some point in adulthood, something new becomes possible. For the first time, the person who once had to be the strong child can begin to ask a different kind of question. What do I actually need? This question can feel unfamiliar at first. People who grew up too fast are often very good at understanding the needs of others, but their own needs can feel distant, almost unclear. So this process begins slowly. It might start with learning that resting is allowed, that not solving every problem immediately is okay, that asking for support is not weakness. For someone who spent years being the responsible one, these changes can feel uncomfortable, even unnatural. But something important begins to happen when a person starts allowing themselves small moments of care. They begin to reconnect with parts of themselves that had to stay quiet for a long time. Curiosity, softness, playfulness. The parts of the self that were never fully lost, only postponed. In a way, healing from growing up too fast is not about erasing the strength that was developed. That strength is real. It helped them survive. But now it can be balanced with something that was missing before: gentleness. The understanding that they do not always have to carry everything. That life does not always require them to be the one who holds it all together. And slowly, over time, something meaningful happens. The adult who once had to grow up too quickly begins to give themselves something they never fully received as a child. Patience. Understanding. Permission to rest. Not because the past can be changed, but because the future no longer has to be lived in the same survival mode. And sometimes, the most powerful realization is this: you are never meant to handle everything alone. You were just a child. And even now, it is not too late to treat yourself with the care the child always deserved.